Yo, it's the NOC, the Nerds of Color, and we are back with another ShoPowSho. It's your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange, the Adobro, the Babinka Boy, the leader of the Holla Homies at the center, gang. And I can't do this alone without the amazing Ates. What's up, Kataphorric and Viva, hey. Valentina?
What up?
Tina, hi, good to see you. Kat, always a pleasure. We've been grinding, and actually this is take two. I'll let the people know in on something. We were already recording, but we had some because our guest is so lit. You know what I'm saying? She's so what you call it, lightning. She's got that static appeal. I'm trying to think of phrases, but my mind is kind of just blown because we had some material, but we're gonna bring it back in anyway. But talking about bringing it back, she was on here before. She was in our episode 50 with the lovely Ella J. Bosco and director Leslie Alejandro. They had an amazing single that you should check out if you haven't seen it. It makes you proud. It makes you feel so good to be brown and proud. It's called Gold, and her name is Ruby Ibarra. I am just the biggest fan of hers. I'm so honored to have her back. Yeah, she's just amazing to me. She's an icon, and she does all this as well as holding it down as a researcher by day. Like, come on now. Like, I think I'm doing enough. Like, nah. She's handling business and is a superstar. So we're honored and blessed to have her. Let's bring her up on the screen because we want to get to recording. I want to get into her story. Give it up for Miss Ruby Ibarra.
Yo, what up, everybody? Thank you so much again for having me. My name is Ruby Ibarra, representing Tacloban City, representing the Bay Area. Y'all can call me Miss Ube Ibarra. Y'all can call me Ate Laing. Y'all can call me Miss Jollibee Spaghetti with a 2-piece chicken on the side. Miss Halo Halo. What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for having me here again. Super hyped to be here.
Yes, super hyped. And thank you again, Ruby, for coming back through and also coming through back again for us to do another take on this. Truly appreciate it. Again, just reminds me why you're such an amazing person and an icon. I just love you, yo. I love you so much. And we haven't even met in physical in person, but just that mental energy, that vibe that you bring as a person, as a spirit, as with everything that you're doing. I just love it, and I'm honored to have you back here. Let me throw it to Tina because we want to get going on this. So Viva, Valentina, why don't you hit us up with the first question out the gate?
So Ruby, tell us again, where are you from? But like, where are you really from? And where are your parents from?
I'm from the Bay Area. I'm just playing. As we mentioned, for the folks that are tuned in right now, we kind of started this conversation earlier, but like I mentioned earlier, every time I hear this kind of question, it kind of brings back, PTSD for me. It brings back a lot of memories from my childhood. Every time I hear this sentence or this phrase, it's always a loaded question. I think that, what comes with this question is an assumption most of the time, assumption of who I am and where I'm from. And, I bet that everybody that's, or a lot of the people that are tuned in right now, and the majority of the people on this panel have probably heard this question asked to them at multiple points in their life. I know for me, whether it was in school or I've been on a plane, actually. For the folks that have heard my album Circa 91, I have a skit on there where I'm in conversation with an older gentleman, someone, a white dude basically, and he keeps pestering me and asking, like, where are you really from? No, where are your parents from? Like, do you know who Manny Pacquiao is? And things like this, and like really digging to basically allowing me to expose myself and making me say that, I'm a foreigner at the end of the day. I think that's where that question is really trying to get to. And, when I hear this question, I think of that, but of course I also think about the beautiful places that I do call home. When I think about the word home, that was a word that was pretty much, the overall umbrella word that composed my entire album. I have always been, I'm super proud to be part of this show called Nerds of Color because I've always, defined or characterized myself as a nerd, whether it's, being part of my 9-to-5 job, being a scientist, or me growing up and just being completely in love with books. I mean, I have an entire bookshelf, like so many novels. I have bins outside. Oh, I definitely have to show some of my favorite books later. But I've always called myself a nerd, and define the word home and how I approached my last album, I basically created an outline. What is home, and what does home mean to me? And to have this question at the start of our conversation, I think is perfect, especially as it helps sum up not only my last project, but also I think details a lot about things that I'm most passionate about. And when I think about home, I think ultimately, I think about two places off the top of my head, but I also think of it as something that is fluid. Although, I attribute two specific locations as my home, I think that, my home might be different next year. I might move somewhere else, or my home is ultimately, where I build community, whether I'm traveling in New York and I'm, building relationships with other artists or collaborating with other people. That to me is ultimately home, where I'm most comfortable and where I find that I'm most myself. That is home at the end of the day. But to give a physical location to your answer, to your question, number one, home is definitely Tacloban City, Philippines. That is where I was born. That's where my mom is from. And that's where I spent the first 5 years of my life. And I think if I wasn't from, Tacloban City, I would have a completely different viewpoint in life. The things that I carry with me as a 1.5 generation Filipino American inform, my beliefs, inform my political stances, inform how I navigate in the different spaces in the world, whether it's in academia, whether it's in music, whether I'm, just, chatting it up with the people that I'm meeting. It makes me who I am today. And, coupled with that is the Bay Area, of course, representing the Bay all day, every day. And I'm just very lucky that out of all the places in the U.S., the place that my parents decided to move to was the Bay Area, because, as I mentioned earlier, we moved in the 90s, and I'm sure even before that point, but for me growing up, it's always been a melting pot of a community. You really can't step outside. If you live in the Bay Area, you can't step outside and not hear Spanish around the corner of your neighborhood. You can't step outside and not see a pho shop. You can't step outside and not see someone of a different racial background as you. And I think having that kind of community growing up allowed me to better fit in. I think at the end of the day, fit in this new home. And it made me also feel like I was never too far from home, because I know for me growing up in the East Bay, specifically Hayward, California, it was only a couple blocks away that I could find Valerio's bakery shop from where I lived in, and find pandesal on the weekends get some pandesal on the weekends with my mom. And I think, when I think about these two places, Tacloban City and the Bay Area, if it wasn't for these two places, I would be a completely different person. And I'm very grateful to call these two places my home. And at the end of the day, these are always going to be the places that I celebrate and cherish. And I'll always continue to make sure to tell stories so that they continue to live on, they continue to be celebrated. Because I think, when we forget where we come from, I think ultimately we kind of end up being blinded of where we want to go and how we want to, move forward and how we want to progress. And so I carry that with me all the time. I think if you don't know where you're from, if you don't know your past, you don't know your future. And, I just love to end this answer with that quote.
Bam! She's killing that answer once again.
Beautiful.
My name is Ruby Ibarra. I'm Miss Philippines. I'm just kidding.
Hey! Yo, I love it, yo. Oh man, okay. Let me stop fanboying right now. I feel like I already know you in a way, and we're gonna take it through your career and everything because of Circa 1991, when I finally got introduced to you and was feeling the music. Like, I could just play that through. It's one of those, there's certain albums that you got to just play through. Like, you can, like, some people want to fast forward to their favorite song, whatever, but nah, I got stuff from track one to the last track, and it just takes you on a journey. And I went, and it was an album with Circa 1991 that I went through so many ranges of emotions. So I just got to give you props again. And we're going to get to that point when you finally created that. But like, yeah, because in a way, what we're doing is kind of telling that story, because we're telling your story, and you encapsulated with the track. So it's like no reason to tell it, but like, I want to dig in more because I need to know more. I'm a fan. So again, let me stop going off on a tangent. But what I always do with Tina's question is again to celebrate before we celebrate more of you. It's celebrating the elders that came before, whether it be your mom and dad, and what you kind of drew from them into being the personification of their love, but also the elders before them and some of their stories. Showing some love to your grandparents, or just any stories of what came before, and then when you came into the picture, and kind of continuing on their legacy and their journey through you. Ruby.
So for my parents, their love story, I think, started in Manila. My mom was a college student at the time, and she was staying in one of those boarding houses, aka dormitory, and her roommate happened to have a cousin that was single. And I think, up until that point, my mom grew up in a I didn't mention this earlier, but my mom grew up in a very, very strict household. It was very traditional, super religious, and she was the youngest of 7 children, and she was the only daughter. All of her older siblings were all boys. They were all kuyas. So they definitely knew where she was at all times of the day. And I think, it was just always kind of like her mindset was always, I got to get my degree. I got to study. I got to focus. No room for fun. Can't really socialize. It was kind of that lifestyle. And I think, with that, growing up in a traditional household, coupled with the fact that, they where they were living at and the times that they were living in, I also have to recognize that, the mindset for people her age at that time was a lot different for, someone like me right now, and having the liberties that I have right now. I know for my mom, growing up, especially in a more rural town in the Philippines, she's mentioned to me multiple times in our different conversations that, sometimes she'd have a classmate at school or a neighbor in her town that would have relatives that were from overseas, whether they were from the US or they were from California. And, one of the stories that she mentioned to me was one time one of her classmates brought to school like a box of chocolates, like I think it was Hershey's from the US. And she gave my mom one in class, and my mom, tried the chocolate, and it was kind of like, there was that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory moment where everyone's like, oh, I want to try that. It's like the golden chocolate from America. And my mom said she had never tasted chocolate that tasted like that ever in her life. And that was like one of the defining moments where, she realized, like, whatever it takes, I'm going to end up living in America. And I don't blame her to have that mindset, because again, for a lot of them, and for my family, they definitely weren't well off. They definitely had a lot of financial struggles, a lot of members in the family that they had to feed. And so she really wasn't exposed to, any of these luxuries. And I think the only kind of understanding that she had of America was these Hollywood films, whether it was watching these movies that she saw, or listening to music and, artists like Barbara Streisand and so forth. And, this was her understanding of what America was like. Basically, she equated it to Hollywood. And so she kind of, already fantasized about it growing up. And I think it was kind of fate that she ended up with my dad, because at the time that they met, my dad was in the process of getting his citizenship from his parents. He was about to move to California. So they just met. But I think in about like 6 or 9 months, he had to be in America. He was planning to move to America. So, things moved very quickly. My mom ended up having me. And by the time my mom was pregnant with me, my dad was already settling in the Bay Area. And so, I spent a lot of my first 4, 5 years of my life, my formative years of my life, just with my mom and my grandmother, because that's who I lived with in Tacloban City. And one of the things I am super grateful for my mom was she's actually been the introduction to hip hop for me. She introduced me to the very first hip hop I ever heard of. We spent a lot of our afternoons watching noontime variety shows, Filipino noontime variety shows. And on one afternoon, I distinctly remember I was sitting, the three of us were sitting in the living room, and this artist comes on stage. Mind you, this was in the 90s. He was decked out in MC Hammer type gear with the flowy baggy pants and all that. And but his music was completely different than anything I had ever heard of. It was the beat was a lot more rhythmic, and he wasn't singing. The music that was coming out of his mouth was poetic, and I think I was just completely dumbfounded that he was using his voice as an instrument. I had never heard anything like that before. And I just remember being completely captivated and glued to the TV, to the point where I was blocking everybody's view. My grandma had to tell me to move my big head out of the way. And, I was like, who is this artist? I said it in Waray, the Kinuhiya. That means who is this person? And I think that from that moment on, my mom ended up buying his album so that I could listen, to his music, and actually have the very same the very cassette tape that my mom bought in the 90s. So this is for the kids that are tuned in right now. Back then, we had these things called cassette tapes. Before you can download, you actually have to have this physical thing with this film inside. And to rewind it, you would have to have a rewinder where you can also manually turn it with your finger. But yeah, this album was called Yo by Francis M. And the song that I heard on that very afternoon was Mga Kababayan, which is off of this album. So my mom ended up buying this for me. And, the rest is history. I listened to this nonstop. Even when we moved to the US, I kept listening to it. So, when I think about my parents, specifically my mom, I think about her being the person that, led me to hip hop, led me to music. I grew up in a household that was also very musical. A lot of my aunts, my uncles, and my cousins were singers, played guitar. So I heard it and saw it all around me. And I think all of that kind of nurtured that passion in me and that interest, and now subconsciously also planted that love. And now I find myself being an artist and making my music, and seeing the parallels in my lyrics with Francis M's music as well.
Hell yeah, I absolutely love that. Yo, my first tape, hip hop tape. So that was your first hip hop tape, right? As well.
First hip-hop tape.
Wow. Yeah, mine was Crushing by oh my God, the Fat Boys, and rest in peace too. I think we just lost Prince Marky D. Just passed, if I'm not mistaken, like a couple months ago. But yeah, Fat Boys Crushing, because the Beach Boys, it was like that amalgamation, because at the time, Run DMC and Aerosmith, that was like kicking off those crossovers and everything. I love it. And it was a tape too, because I'm an old head. And so I remember tapes. I love it. I love it. So you were about 4 or 5 when you moved to America, right? What was it like for you, that transition? Obviously, like you said, your dad had already came over here, and I thought, again, feel like I know you because of Circa's 1991, and I didn't know that your dad was in the picture or anything like that, because it felt like, because you had a powerful mom, a strong woman, mother, taking care, handling business. Like to me, my father was never in the picture because he was military. So like it was hard for me growing up because I didn't feel like I knew him with him being away. So I'm assuming that was kind of very much the same thing in your formative years. He was already in America. You were growing up there and then you came over. Can you just tell us a little bit about that transition so you finally moved to the US. Were you too young to remember the Philippines? And then what was it like, quote unquote, assimilating and getting used to the culture of America and growing up, as a immigrant kid?
Yeah, I think I was a little too young to have very distinct memories. I mean, I have small things like, seeing Francis M on the TV for the first time, or seeing my cousins and my relatives, play music on the weekends. But it's kind of just like flashes of memory for me. I think, a lot of my memory that I can, definitely remember start from America. But the thing that's always been weird to me is when I think back on the earliest memories, one of the earliest things that I can remember was when me and my mom went to my elementary school, and she tried to register me to start classes. Because the thing is, when we moved to the US, we came here in November. school had already started. It was already a couple of months in, and I think my mom was afraid that I would have to register for the next school year, and she didn't want me to be, quote unquote, behind, and not with my age range. And so one of the earliest things that I can remember was us going to the school campus early in the morning and getting my paperwork. And one of the questions that was also asked was, my citizenship status, and also if I knew how to understand and speak in English. And hearing things like that, and then starting off this school year, also being immediately placed into ESL. For the folks that are tuned in that aren't familiar with that, I'm not sure if they actually still have this program, but it was called English as a Second Language. I don't even remember being assessed if I actually understood or could speak English. I was just, immediately put in one of those classes, and I think they just automatically assumed. And I remember, wondering, like, why am I in this kind of class? I made friends with the folks in that class with me, but I was also wondering, like, how come this seems a little bit different from the other classes that other students are taking? And, I think having that kind of experience early on and making that also one of my earliest memories, I think, I understood already that, I was different. I kind of saw myself as a foreigner who I never really felt like an American, I think, especially that being one of my earliest memories. And so, I find myself, battling through kind of that emotion, that mindset, all the way into my adulthood years, asking myself, like, do I actually belong here? How do I fit in this puzzle called America? Why am I perceived to be different? Why do people automatically assume that, I don't belong here? And, questions like that. And I think if it wasn't for taking classes like ethnic studies in college, where I actually read about myself, read about, people who looked and sounded like me, read about the history of, familiar names, and that I was like, okay, I do have a place, in this big, conglomerate that's called America. And so for me, remembering back on those early childhood years, a lot of that were memories like that. Other things that I remember also was, walking home from school with my father in the late afternoon, and some of the kids in my apartment, following us and, yelling ching chong, ching chong, ching chong while we're walking. And I was like, again, that's another memory where I'm like, why are they asking me that? Why am I being taunted in that way? And whether it was that or my mom and me and my sister shopping at the mall, and again, me being very very young and having just come from Tacloban City, I was still very, and I still am very fluent in our language, which is called Waray. And my mom having to tell me in public, like, no, we're in the mall. Don't speak Waray. You have to speak in English. We're in public, or people are going to get mad. Things like that. And it's as a kid, it's like, how do you process, and how do you kind of take in this kind of information without it causing self-doubt or even self-hate? And so a lot of those, early memories I tried to capture in the album, ultimately in the lyrics, whether it was in the skit with the person on the airplane or the teacher mispronouncing my name, a lot of that is rooted from very real life experiences that I had.
Hell yeah. And just like, as you were saying all that, like, cause I'm such a super fan of Circa 1991. Like, yo, it came from real shit. And like, like I can feel that. And I appreciate that you took that from yourself and put it into the music, that fire, because it speaks volumes for those of us who had those similar experiences. And you put it on wax, and now we can be like, okay, bam, this is it. And if you want to know about what I went through, this is it right here. Like, I can play your track and be like, boom, this is what I went through and lived. And I love that you encapsulated that and put it on wax, and just, man. And it makes me think, like, in a way too, because like I've done that with myself, and everything I've done is put it in, is turn that fire. And I think you kind of developed that fire because I see that fire in you, and you put it in them lyrics, especially when your live performances I've been able to check out. Like, that energy is so raw and but it comes from a place so real that, man, I'm just losing track of myself, because I'm just blown away that, boom, you put it there, and you're able to make that feeling come out in the music. and it's just so beautiful. I totally got lost in the sauce just because I'm just so amazed with what you've been able to do. So, man, let me bring myself back on track because I just totally completely got lost on that because it hits home for me. Because I've been there, like being called different names, and then this journey been on. So get back on track, Patrick. So you're growing up. What would your parents tell us about? So now growing up in America, what would they tell us about it? What were you into? Maybe so music was always a thing there. As you said, you'd have the family events. But what would they tell us about what you were into, and maybe what is something you'd be afraid that they tell us that you did back in the days?
I was definitely into hip hop, early on. I mean, being introduced to Francis M after that, I became hungry. I needed to have more music like that. And again, I find myself very fortunate that not only did we move to the Bay Area, but this was the 90s. This was the golden era of hip hop. I mean, when we first moved to the US, I think this was also the time where Snoop Dogg was really popping on the radio. You had Ice Cube putting out music. NWA wasn't together anymore. Pac was putting out music. I think after 2 years of living here, or after 1 year, Pac also got shot. R.I.P. Tupac. So I saw all of that in real time happening, and that hip hop. I definitely continued my love for hip hop, especially growing up in the Bay. This is the place where E40 is from, Hieroglyphics is from. So it just continued to nurture my passion and my interest in hip hop. And I also want to share that, Francis M was my first cassette tape from my mom, but my very first album, I think one of the Christmases that one of our first Christmases here was the Friday soundtrack. And which is like, what? Like that's like a 5-year-old kid's Christmas gift. So I remember, listening to like the Friday soundtrack. I was like, dang, I love this music, is dope. Like the beats are banging. Like I was just like listening to that on my little my CD player with my thin headphones on, can barely hear the bass on them. But that was my interest. And my parents, specifically my mom, she always nurtured that. She also played the same type of music that I was into. I remember she dropped me off to school and we'd be listening to Aaliyah from like the Nutty Professor soundtrack. She bought that album, and we listened to that on the way to school. But one thing that my parents or my sister might tell you that I was into that not a lot of people know was, again, this was the 90s. So I was also very heavy into the boy band and the girl band music. I was 100% all about girl power. I've always been about girl power. 100% a Spice Girls fan. Y'all see my room now. I have posters of myself, so I don't need to have any mirrors. But back then, from top to bottom, except for my ceiling, it was completely covered in Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Spice Girls posters. You name it all. The BB, the Bop, the Teen Beat. I had all the magazines. I pulled out all the posters, hung them on my wall. Was completely in love with AJ McLean. Wanted to be like Scary Spice. Watched the Spice World movie. Like those were also the things that I was into. But yeah, I think. How I'd like to wrap up that answer is I've always had such an eclectic taste in music. Like if you open up my iTunes folder now, you'd find everything from Blackalicious to BTS to Glock 9 to Francis M's music to EDM, to everything. I listened to everything, and I think that was one of the things I still carry with me to this day was being open-minded about all and any kinds of genres.
I love it. All right, so let's get into the school years. So like where you can actually take this love of music and learn about it by getting into band or choir and all that. Did you get into any of that? Like what were some of the electives that you got into getting into school and everything, like your middle school, high school years and all that?
So unlike 99.9% of Filipinos, I can't sing. I wish I was like, I had Ella J. Bosco's, singing skills. I think it was kind of natural that here I was already in love with hip hop, that I ended up wanting to become a poet. I wanted to emulate the very same artist that, that I idolized. I wanted to be like Lauryn Hill. And so one of the electives that I took my high school year was I joined the poetry club and the drama club, where I did multiple rap performances in front of the school. Rewinding back to elementary school, one thing that I did musically was I took a violin class all school year. So I do still know how to read notes, but I probably wouldn't be. I still remember the formation too, but I can't play the violin anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I definitely was one of those school nerds, violins and libraries.
I love it. All right, so let's get on to the Filipino-ness of parents and when you leave from high school going to college. This is a question we ask everybody because it's something we always get done. You can get into arts, but that's an elective. That isn't a career that they want us to go, doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, which we know your day gig. So what was that like when you had to choose to go to college? And then when and then when hip hop became like your profession as well, outside of that, what was that? What did you initially want to do? And or maybe what did your parents want you to do? You know what I'm saying? Because they influence that. They don't want you to go into the arts. So you may have wanted to go for music, but no, you got to go this place. What was that? Give us that situation, high school, choosing your path and where you're going to go.
I think one of my earliest memories of the kind of profession that I thought I would be as an adult was, I don't know about y'all growing up in your schools, but for some reason in my elementary school, in the first grade, we had these small photo cards where it had our photo, it had our name, it had our favorite food. I think mine was pizza, and then your hobbies, and then what I want to be when I grow up. What I put on that card was I wanted to be a doctor. I think even when I was still living in the Philippines, one of my first toys was a stethoscope, a full-blown doctor kit, a little lab coat. My mom always, shared with me that I wanted to be a doctor ever since I was younger. And again, I feel like I keep repeating myself, but growing up as a kid in the 90s, one of the things that I was introduced to in one of my science classes in elementary school was this gentleman by the name of Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Hey, Bill Nye!
Bill!
Hell yeah.
And I remember, I was in class, I was like, are y'all seeing this right now? Not only is he doing science, he's rapping. What the hell? This is the best of both worlds right now. Low key, Bill Nye is one of my idols who I would love to meet someday if that the opportunity ever presents itself. And Bill Nye ultimately just made science that much cooler for me. And it was also one of those subjects where I didn't feel like I was struggling, I guess. Math, I completely sucked at that. I hated math. I loved writing. Of course, I loved English classes. I loved to read. I could write essays all day long. But science kind of also gave me a challenge where it explained the way things work. So I've always loved science. And I took AP chemistry and AP biology in high school. And I knew early on that, okay, this is the path that I want to take, something related to science, and that would eventually get me to become a doctor. I knew I would be pre-med. And so when it came to applying for, universities, I think I ultimately decided on biochemistry because I couldn't decide between biology and chemistry. I was like, you know what, let's just do biochemistry. Let's just merge them together. And so that's what I ended up majoring in at UC Davis. I majored in biochemistry and molecular biology. And I was pre-med until I took my organic chemistry class where I was like, hell no, I'm not going to continue with this. This is way too much. Yeah, for the folks that are familiar with OChem, that's the make it or break it class where you know whether or not you're going to continue pursuing med school. So I ended up following the science path, and I became a scientist, as my day job now. And how my parents were involved in that process, though, was I do want to share that my mom has always had my back 100%, has always supported both me and my sister in all of our passions. At every, at every performance that I've done, as long as she's in town, she's been there front row center. When my sister was growing up, my sister being in tennis games, my mom was always there supporting her. Everything that we were passionate in and that we had, curiosity and interest in, she wanted to nurture that. And I think ultimately that was because for her growing up in a strict household where her interests and her passions weren't necessarily supported, she knew how kind of damaging that was. And she wanted to make sure that, she did the opposite of that with me and my sister. So shout out to my mama.
Hey!
And I remember doing college applications my senior year and, me showing my mom, like, look, I'm applying to these schools. I'm going to do biochem. And she actually, this is something that will always stick with me. She told me, are you sure you want to do that? And I remember asking her, like, why? She said, I looked up this engineering school called Full Sail. It's in, I think it was in Florida. She said, you can be a music engineer. Maybe you should check it out. And, you could do something that you like. And I remember thinking, like, is this a trick question? Like, what's the right answer here? And I think it was kind of reverse psychology for me. Like, here was my mom presenting me, this opportunity and her support in me going to a music school. And I was like, nah, I'm going to do biochem.
Wow.
Yeah, like that's, oh, wow.
That's so dope. Shout out to moms, yo. You got the coolest moms. Introduced you to hip hop, was all with it, with everything. I love that. Moms. Props to moms. Props, Mommy Ibarra.
Is out there.
I love that. Ah, man, cool. That's so dope. So, all right. I have to ask, man, because you're so knowledgeable with everything you do. Like, again, I'm a Super Stan fan. Were you always like that? Like, or did it like happen in, like, did we pass a period of time? Like, were you always just so knowledgeable and knowing of self? Like, where did this confidence come from? When did you like know I'm fucking Ruby Ibarra, son? Like, because you're just so amazing. Like, where's this answer in this life period so far? Well, did it come here in high school before we're going into college, or did it grow in college?
I think this is the most challenging question yet of this entire interview, because when I hear that question, I don't even see myself as confident. And I talk about this all the time with my sister or even my partner. I'm like, I think people perceive me a little bit different than how I perceive myself. Growing up, there were, and especially growing up as a woman of color, that's already an added layer of complexity. Growing up as a teenage woman, that's another layer of a complexity where, you have your self-doubts because of societal pressures. Again, also being an immigrant, that's another added layer of complexity. And I had to peel, and I'm still continuing to peel all those layers up until to this day. I do want to share, because I think it's important, for the folks that are tuned in, especially if there's young women that are tuned in, that sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel confident. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm strong. For many years of my teenage years, I couldn't even look in the mirror. I avoided to like truly look at myself in the mirror because I didn't find myself beautiful. Like, I would just like comb my hair really quick so I could just leave and go to school and not actually see myself. And, it took a lot of, I think, self-reflection, coupled with, again, taking courses like ethnic studies and meeting the right people to have these conversations with, for me to understand that I'm fine the way I am, that what makes me beautiful is what makes me unique. And, again, that's why I'm super thankful that I got to do a track like Gold with Ella J. Bosco, because I think, this isn't a unique experience. I know that there's so many young women and young men out there that have self-doubts on a daily basis. I still do to this day. And I think, as I've I also recognize that as I continue to make these kinds of music that are, very strong and, very empowering, that people do have this perception of me. And sometimes I find myself kind of having that imposter syndrome where I'm like, I'm supposed to be this voice of reason or empowerment, but how can I do that if I don't even feel confident or I don't even feel beautiful? And I think it's just, at the end of the day, I think I recognize that in reality, it's going to be a daily challenge. It's going to be a daily battle, and it's going to be an uphill battle at that. And I can only imagine when I'm 70 years old, I might not still get there. And I think that's okay, as long as every day, I self-reflect, and I'm also self-aware. And I also know of my history, and I'm not ashamed of that history. And I think what's helping that is also that we're seeing a lot more representation, whether it's in film or music. I think ultimately, when we see ourselves out there presented and represented, we're made to feel like we do belong, and that we are the quote unquote normal. When our voices and our faces are normalized, we feel like we fit in the picture as well. And I think that's what also allows me to keep pushing and allows me to keep writing the kind of music that I do, because I'd like to think that, if I write lyrics where, I'm completely unfiltered and I'm unwavering in my beliefs, that it's helping someone out there that might be like an 8-year-old version of me that hated themselves. And I think that's why I love music and I love film, because those were the things that I always found comfort and confidence and strength in.
Hell yeah, love it. All right, so we're in college. You're pursuing biochem, right? And you're doing that. You're getting your studies in. You're learning for yourself. You're taking ethnic studies. You're building up on all of that. When did so you're obviously pursuing your professional, what you're going to do, your day gig, hip hop. You always loved hip hop. Like, when did you start writing bars, and like what was the process? How did you dive? Okay, did it happen in college or did it happen after? Tell me the birth of this amazing person that I love now. How did this happen?
I actually started writing lyrics or poems. I wrote poems first when I was in like my freshman year of high school.
Okay,
I think I wrote my very first song, and I saved up money. What I ended up doing was, I was like, okay, it was thankfully at a time where people were already putting up their own music online. You had things like the file sharing software, and people were putting up stuff on like mp3.com, SoundCloud. And so I was like, I want to be able to do that too. I was also, again, Nerds of Color, I was also part of message boards where I would like be writing rap lyrics and battling other rappers on the message boards. I'd be like typing like, these are my bars. Super nerdy. And then I remember like, this is cool to be able to type my lyrics online, but I want to record myself. And so freshman year of my high school, I think 4 months of the year, and I don't advise this. I highly, say like, don't copy me, don't do this. To save up money, because I didn't want to, bug my mom. My new diet became flavored water and hot Cheetos for 4 months so that I can save the remainder of my lunch money. And eventually, after 4 months, I saved up $100. I went to my local music store with my mom on a Saturday morning, and I bought a dynamic microphone, brought it home, plugged it into my computer, and I recorded my very first rap, posted it online, and I've been doing that ever since. Thankfully for the internet, that pretty much cut out the middleman and allowed me to have the world as my stage. Like once us unsigned artists put our music up online, it's like boom, here it is. Yeah. Don't have to get it published anywhere else. It's available for all ears who land on this link. And so that was high school. I started recording, and then I eventually, again, joining the drama club, got to perform also in front of my high school. And there was nothing like it. As much as I was a fan of hip hop, the adrenaline rush that I got from performing and writing was like no other. Growing up and feeling like I didn't belong, also having a lot of, self-doubt, insecurities, and self-hate. It was because of music that I felt, wow, I have a voice for the very first time. Like I found a way to be able to communicate myself in a way that I couldn't otherwise. And so, music allowed me to do that. And the rest is history.
Wow. So there was no, like, were you not nervous? It was just like the confidence was there because you kind of blocked it when it was happening. I would assume when like people were calling names. And so you just kind of put it, okay, like, fuck that. All right, I'm gonna get on this track, and then boom, you can't stop me because I already got the mic, and I'm just gonna do my thing. Like, unless you hit me to take this mic from me, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I'm just blown away, and I love that self-confidence.
Oh, to this day, I still get hella nervous. I mean, like, on performance days, I can't eat like at least 6 hours before the show. My hands get super sweaty and clammy. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. I'm like, while my band is like chilling, like in the green room, I am in the back towards the closet with headphones on, with my hoodie on. I look like Eminem from 8 Mile about to battle, like going through my lyrics like nonstop. And but I think once I set foot on the stage and the very first word escapes my mouth, it's kind of like I go on autopilot. I don't know. I never have.
It's like Bruce Banner into Hulk. You like change up.
Pretty much. I can't like compare it to any other feeling where it just feels right. Like I feel like I was born to do this once I'm performing.
I love it. Yo, so it started in high school. Damn, dope. Do you still have that mic? Is it still kind of walk around the house somewhere?
I do still have the mic as well. Yeah.
Hell yes.
I'm a hoarder.
That's dope. That needs to go in a museum. I'm telling you, because you're a girl. You're a superstar already, man. Like, yo, man, you're on my Mount Rushmore of hip hop, especially Filipino hip hop. Like, and just, yo, man. Anyway, I'm blown away. So, okay, we're in college. We're back in college. We're getting our research game on, and we're manifesting for the future, getting the degree up. But like, and so like you're already doing it, like you said, back in high school, like to take it. When did you start taking it like to be like a side hustle profession? Because just how you combining doing amazing things as a researcher and then like becoming a superstar in hip hop, like how? Like
Sway?
What were the steps? Without breaking it down too much, you know what I'm saying? But like the process, like connecting, like you work with Rocky Rivera, like Bamboo, Beat Rock, yo, like legendary status, Bay Area status. Like how did that connection happen? Like getting it, is that where it kind of like took it to another level for you in a way, meeting those cats?
Well, fun fact, I've always been a fan of, Native Guns. That was Bamboo and Kiwi back then. I was a big fan of Blue Scholars. I still am.
Yes.
Like I remember being in my dorm room in college, and my roommate's boyfriend actually introduced me to Blue Scholars. Like he was like playing the music, like we were in his car. I was like, "What artists are these?" And they're like, "You never heard of him? He's a Filipino MC. They're from Seattle." And I was like, "What?" And then I remember like downloading Native Guns music off of Napster. Don't tell Bam. And I was like, "Oh my god! Like these are super dope MCs, and they're Filipino." And I've always just been a big fan of theirs, and eventually. So to answer your question, I did a lot of open mics throughout college. I joined the slam poetry team in my college as well. So that allowed me to get a lot of exposure on performing on different stages and also meeting other artists. And that eventually led me to being part of shows and lineups where all of a sudden I got to open up for Bamboo and Geo, and being completely fangirling. I remember one of the first times I opened up for Bam was at UC Irvine. Me and my fiance, we drove down there, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm about to beat Bamboo for the first time. And I remember I got to the venue and Bam was there with Rocky Rivera and their eldest son at the time, who was a baby. And I was like completely fangirling. I remember after the show, I went up to him nervously, and I burned like my mixtape on a CD. And I was like, "Excuse me, Bamboo, can I take a picture with you?" And he was like, yeah, come through. And then so I took a picture with him, and I was like, this is my mixtape. You can listen to it if you want. And then he took it, put it in his pocket. I was thinking he's gonna throw that shit away. But I remember thinking like, oh my god, here are the very artists that I used to download music from or support and listen to, and now I get to be on the same lineups as them. And I think that helped me gain the confidence that I needed to now be on the same lineups and call these artists that I look up to this day as my peers. And I'm also grateful that they've been so supportive of me, and they took me in Beat Rock, and have I've built this community with them, and they've allowed me to stand on their shoulders as well. Because I think at the end of the day, let's face it, if I wasn't for artists like Bamboo, Kiwi, Rocky Rivera, Hopi, Spits Hard, there would be no Ruby Ibarra. They helped open up the stage for me, and we also have to give them their flowers, the people that came before us. That of course includes One Voice, that includes Jocelyn Enriquez. This includes Kai. These are the artists of the '90s that helped set the stage for Filipino American artists like myself to be able to do the things that we do now in 2021.
Hell yeah! Ugh, and you're killing it. So good, so good. All right, so circa 1991. And putting that album together, can you talk about the genesis of that project? When, okay, I'm gonna record this album, or was Lost in Translation your first album? I'm trying to remember. What was the first album you had?
Circa 91 is my first album, but Lost in Translation is my first project. But that was a mixtape that I dropped in 2012.
Gosh, so putting those together, like finally, or let's really break down Circa 1991, because that kind of like really put you on the map in a way. Putting it on wax. Did that happen after you graduated from college? And what is the genesis of that project?
So yeah, that was after I graduated college. And by that point, I had already been on several festivals and lineups with beat rock artists. I've already became familiar with Fat Gums, who is the CEO of Beat Rock, and so we've already built this kind of relationship. And I remember, I think it was 2015, Beat Rock reached out to me for the first time, and they asked me if a relationship, can a Ruby Ibarra and a Beat Rock relationship possibly work? And they wanted me to think on it. And I remember reading the message, I was like, oh. Like, oh no, oh my God, like this is my dream come true. Like, are they sure they contacted the right person? And I was so starstruck that I completely forgot to reply. Not to leave them on red. I just feel like I think honestly, I also felt like I wasn't ready to join Beat Rock because, for the folks that are familiar with, their discography, you have like One Rifle Per Family, you have, Blue Scholars on there, Faith, Classy, you have these amazing, talented MCs. And, and I know kind of like the precedents that Beat Rock has sent. Not only do they make dope music, but it's music with substance as well. And I think ultimately I felt like I wasn't at that point in my career yet where I could deliver something of the same caliber that they've been putting out. So I was like, I'll get back to them. Let me hone in on my skills first before even entertaining that idea. So fast forward to another year later, I was eating lunch with my family, and I get another email from Beat Rock, and they're like, "Hey, want to release an album with Beat Rock?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that now it's like specific, it's project specific." And Bamboo called me right away, like even when I was taking the lunch, and then he was like, "We'd love to set up a meeting with you. We'd love to make this happen." And from there, I think I spent the next year. The biggest conflict was, what is my album going to be about? Because, as I mentioned earlier, Beat Rock has come out with very substantial music with a purpose. It's very political. It's very story driven. And I knew if I was going to come out with an album with them, it couldn't be like Lost in Translation, where it was just about bars and metaphors and rhyme schemes. Like, at the end of the day, I had to say something. If I'm going to be on the mic, also, listening to artists like Lauryn Hill and Tupac growing up, I've always believed that if you're going to be on the mic, you better have something special to say. You better use that mic and prove to people why you deserve to be on that microphone. And I think the biggest struggle for me, like I spent 1 year drafting different concepts on what the album would be about, going through different instrumentals. And I think what led me to finally realizing what Circa 91 was going to be about was I sent an email to Bamboo and I asked him, how do you know, when it comes to making like a full-length album, how do you approach yours? And it was a very, very short answer. For some people, it might seem like how do you even go from there? Like he basically just told me like be yourself. And I remember like thinking like, be yourself. And that, to me, it's a very short answer, but it told me so much. It was like, well, when I think about what makes me who I am, it's definitely the Philippines. It's definitely family. It's definitely my past. And then those are the three things that basically, sum up an album like Circa 91. Those are the three things that I talk about. What I basically wanted Circa 91 to be was I wanted it to mirror my favorite albums growing up, whether that was The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill or, listening to Tupac's music. Why I feel like artists like Tupac and Lauryn are so legendary and so impactful, and they have such longevity in their careers, is because they make music that make people feel something, that make people feel an emotion, that make people think. And, thinking about those things, it made me realize like the direction that I wanted to take Circa 91 also. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to create a project that makes you want to listen from track number 1 all the way to track number 18 without skipping a song. And by the end of the song, whoever is on the listening end of the headphones, they're supposed to feel like they know who I am. And I think that's the difference that I wanted to do with Circa 91 compared to the Lost in Translation mixtape was, okay, Lost in Translation, you got to see that I can spit, I can write bars, but Circa 91, you're supposed to know who the artist is on the microphone. And that's ultimately what I wanted to accomplish.
And you did that, yo, like straight up, you did that. Like, as I said earlier, I got to listen to it from top to bottom. It's just, it takes me on that journey from highs and lows, and I'm inspired. I'm crying. I'm sad. I'm motivated. I'm lit. I'm just everything in holla back, yo. Just
I'm so glad you say that, by the way, because that was
seriously. And I don't say that lightly. I'm an old head and I've listened to a lot of hip hop. And I wish I had this album, Ruby. I'm looking at you right now, that when I was younger, and I don't want to cry right now, but it would have just made sense, and it would have felt so fucking good, and it would have felt so seen. And I love you for this album because it's so amazing. And I can't wait for my daughter to get a little bit older to like see herself in this as well. And thank you for this art. It is truly art, and I appreciate you greatly. So speaking on that, and one of the most motivating tracks, and that I had to play for my wife and my daughter when I finally, discovered you for myself, really 2019, 2020 is when like I found you. And I'm so blown that I didn't find you earlier because you've been around for a minute, right? And I'm like kind of mad at my friends, like, man, why didn't you tell me about Ruby, especially my West Coast cats? Because I'm an East Coast head. Like, man, y'all didn't know. I didn't know this was out in the Bay Area. This Ruby Ibarra, son. Like, I should have known about this. But then I remember I'm also the cat that's really the forward cat that's telling everybody else about stuff. So I'm like, okay, but like still I'm mad at the people that should have told me. But Island Women Rise, your track with Rocky Rivera and some other great, amazing, talented female MCs, and just the video. And I saw you got the poster in the back and all of that. Man, it's so motivating, yo. And it's so beautiful and just speaks to the amazing, I've always known amazing Philippine women, like my two amazing aunties right now.
That was the song he shared with us to put us on to you.
Yes.
This was after that. And I was like, oh, check this out. And I was like, warrior woman, man. Warrior woman. I felt that. Like, made me want to fight. And that's
how unusual. Good. I think it's so refreshing to kind of hear your music and your perspective, because there is that kind of like good little girl, nurse, schoolgirl, innocent Filipina like ideal, like the boys get to be b-boys and they get to have cars and they get to do the stuff, and then they settle down with a nice girl from the PI who has never done anything before in her life because they've sown their wild oats, right? And then I feel like a lot of that Filipina-ness is in that framework of mother, cook, provider, nurse, nurturer, and not as like a standout individual like you are. And I just think that's great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think, when I think about the matriarchs in my family, it's always been like, what can they provide? What can they give? Again, like you mentioned, I wanted to place an emphasis on that. It's always the female role in the typical, cultural, traditional Filipino household is the caregiver, whether you're the mother, you're the nurse. And so we definitely wanted to challenge that notion with the video and the song.
Yeah, it's so powerful, it's so beautiful, and just, man, a testament to just amazing Philippine women. Y'all been killing it for forever, and it just needs to be seen and heard. And I love it that it's so beautiful and so loud, and it's there. So you dropped Circa 1991, and now you're doing features, you're doing all kind of stuff, and I'm discovering new artists through you. And also, last year with your full-time gig, you're a researcher by day. How just juggling all of that, and then I think you recently were at a film festival. You're dabbling into film as well. Just doing all this, pursuing your passions. How do you make this happen with what you're, and what you want to do with yourself? Like you just, man, I'm just speechless. Just I can't imagine that energy to just be so
Please
amazing.
share some tips with the class of how you balance it all.
Yeah.
I think I would be like a complete liar if I sat here and told y'all like, oh, you can do it this way. Like it's a challenge. Like, let me tell y'all, there's been times where I've had to do an interview at my work parking lot, like literally like removing my goggles and my lab coat, running to my car, get into my car and doing a radio interview in my car, or times where I've had to take a flight to do a tour because I would be in LA on Friday, New York on Saturday, Vegas on Sunday, then have to go back to work at 8 a.m., like come straight from the airport, take an Uber, stuff my duffel bag into my locker, go to work, eye bags and all. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to work. And like, things like that, I think it's always been time management. Time has always been the kind of like the roadblock in my way of being able to juggle everything. But I do want to note that, again, my experience, I don't think my experience is that unique, because especially when we think about people that come from, communities of color, so many of us have to wear multiple hats, whether that's us being a babysitter, an ate, and a student at the same time, or being a student at a university while having to, have a job to be able to pay for tuition. Like, so many of us have that daily struggle of having to balance different things. And for me, it's just been a matter of prioritizing things, cutting out things. If I were to give an advice, is I've had to cut out things that I don't find purposeful or that much, important or significant in terms of what I want to accomplish. For example, I would say for a majority of 2017 and 2018, I barely watched any television. I really caught up on a lot of Netflix and TV last year while I was at home during quarantine. But prior to that, like, if you told me about Stranger Things, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never watched a single episode. It's like, because I didn't have time for it. I think, it's been a balancing act while prioritizing at the same time. But at the end of the day, I think if you love something and you're passionate about something, it doesn't even feel like work. So, when I talk about stories like having to rush to a gig after having to do an 8-hour shift at work and being up until 2:00 in the morning, that to me isn't work. That to me is fun. That to me is like the weekend, because I get to do what I love to do. And, I do want to note, though, for the folks that are tuned in, that self-care and rest is important. I'm not going to sit here and tell y'all that you got to hustle 24/7, because that is also very damaging. If I were to sit here and say that, team no sleep, that would be a complete lie. I make sure that when I sleep, I sleep. I need to have like 12 hours in on like that Sunday, because I catching up on sleep. So that's something that I'm also trying to be more mindful of, especially after going through a year like last year, is taking better care of my health, eating better, actually exercising after not being on a stage for the past year, and making sure I rest, because I think, when we recharge, when we reset ourselves, that allows us to have more energy, and at the end of the day, also affects our output. Like, if I were completely drained physically, emotionally, and mentally, I wouldn't be able to give forth 100% of myself. And I think, again, being people of color, so much is expected from us. We're always expected to give. We're always expected to work, and have so many responsibilities. But I do want to highly stress that, taking care of ourselves is just as important as taking care of others.
Straight up.
I'm glad you touched on that, because that was going to be my next question. Like, how do you relax, and what do you do for self-care? Like, what recharges your batteries?
So how I relax is I write more lyrics.
So what is that process too? That was partially my question. What is your process? And if you're not watching so many things, like, where are you pulling from then?
No, what I consider work nowadays is definitely writing and recording, because I'm in the midst of, working on my next album. But how I relax, which is still kind of tied into, I guess, what I'm into. I've never been tired of music as much as, I hear some artists that are like, I perform, if I'm performing, I need to like completely have a silence. I need to have a break from music. But I'm one of those weird people where I'm like, I listen to music every single day. There hasn't been a day that I can remember where I don't listen to music, or if music is not available, I start humming or I start beatboxing. And I think for me, how I relax is I watch a film, I listen to music, I read a book. But I think subconsciously what ends up happening is I get inspiration from those materials that I'm watching or I'm listening to. And later when I'm in work mode, I take from those inspirations, and, I try to kind of build off of that as well. Like, for example, like when we were working on the Taking Names music video, I was watching a lot of Kubrick films. I don't know if y'all remember the one with Jack Nicholson, the one where his face is like in the door, The Shining.
Oh yeah, Shining.
And,
yeah.
The closing. I think one of the closing scene of that film was. Have y'all seen? I don't want to spoil it for y'all.
Oh hell yeah, that's a classic.
It's from the 70s. You can spoil it. Like,
If you watched it by now, where have you been?
Yeah.
But the closing scene of that film was, I think you see Jack Nicholson in one of the photos, like it pans in the photos, and you're like, oh shit, he was a ghost. Like his picture is in one of these pictures from the 1920s. And I remember watching that like in the middle of the night, and I turned to my fiance and I tell him like, oh my God, that's it. He's like, wait, what's happening? And then I tell him like, that's what I want to have in the Taking Names video. So how I took that as an inspiration, where I was relaxing there, was in the Taking Names video, we Photoshop Bamboo's face as well as my face on one of those like 1924 Philippines World Fair photos, and we transposed that onto one of those old pictures to make it look like we were there, like the World Fair, the 1914 World Fair.
Dope. Dope. I love it.
That's really cool.
They call that active recovery when you're like working out on your rest day. Like you're still
Yes.
stretching, you're still flexing, you're still actively
stretching those
recovering.
muscles.
Yes, exactly.
So speaking on films, so you were at a recent film festival, and we had Diana Paragas. Shout out to Diana Paragas, Yellow Rose. We had her on talking about her next project that she's writing, called Lizards. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but your name was kind of dropped in there a little bit. So we talked a lot about music, but like stepping into the acting game, and possibly with maybe Lizards, there's a role I think in there for you and all that. What is it? What is Ruby going to do with acting? Like, we want to see you now. Like, you're such an amazing, music talent. Like, now are you going to conquer Hollywood? What's up with that? Are you writing some films? Like, what are we going to see with Ruby doing some acting?
Putting your drama club experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I didn't take that class for nothing.
Right?
And as my mom would describe me, I'm OA. I'm always OA. I'm so dramatic. So of course I would get into acting, right? I always do too much. So for me, again, I've always loved music, but I've always also very much loved films. I feel like film is a way to communicate a story in a way that, music can't, where, film has visuals, obviously the visual component. That's why I loved watching, films like Forrest Gump growing up. I loved watching music videos from Busta Rhymes and Missy Elliott, because it's like it gave the music a different form. Like it allowed me to see the visuals and tell the story in a different way that just lyrics and audio is limited to. And having said that, film has always been an interest in the back of my head, whether it's actually being in movies or even writing. I think one of my end goals after some of the things on my bucket list and my to-do list is to write a script, to write a film about a Filipino character, basically like a Circa 91, but in a movie form. That has always been one of my bucket list dreams. And my recent foray into film was recently I was part of the Tribeca Film Festival this past summer. I got to star in a film alongside Vanessa Hudgens, who's also Pinay. Shout out to Vanessa Hudgens.
Hey.
Shout out to Alexandra Shipp, Kiersey Clemens. It was produced by Ezra Miller. I know you're familiar with Ezra. I see you got the superheroes in the back. Shout out to Flash.
Yeah.
And directed by Eamon. And so this film, they contacted me back in the end of 2019. And they were looking for someone to do a performer in one of the scenes, and to also join this group of this girl gang in the film, where I would be with like Vanessa Hudgens and them. And so of course I said, hell yeah, I want to do this role. So I got to do an original song for the movie, as well as appear on screen performing in the movie. And I've also been in talks, like as you mentioned, with Diane, who, by the way,
she's the best. She's so amazing.
She's amazing. She is one of our community's national treasures, if I may say so myself. Like Yellow Rose, if you have not seen Yellow Rose, it is a film that they did so beautifully, where I love the fact that the character is Pinay, who has interests in things outside of her community, a character who just happens to be Filipino, and they don't really exploit that characteristic. And I don't feel like that film is also stereotypical, but also explored very real situations where it talked about immigration in the movie, and this country's current policies around quote unquote undocumented people. And so I think Diane is one of those people who's helping put our stories on the map, and I definitely have been in talks with her, and hopefully I can continue working on in film in any capacity, whether that's directing music videos for other people. I'd love to do that. I had so much fun directing my videos, Taking Names and Us, and so those are things that I also want to do outside of just writing and recording and performing, is being able to work on visuals in different capacities.
Hell yeah, I love it. I love it. Amazing. I can't wait to see. What's the name of that film that was at Tribeca? Because I heard that you're there, but I didn't catch the name of the film.
The film is called Asking for It.
Asking for it. All right. Well, I'm asking for it. That I want to see it. Like, I can't wait for it to get a wider audience and release. Do you know when it will, or is it still traveling the festival circuit?
I think they're still doing the festival circuit, but I believe later this year they'll be making an announcement whether it's theatrical or streaming platform. So it'll be available soon for public view. Awesome.
Well, I can't wait. And as an actor myself, I look forward to hopefully maybe working with you, because we got a couple scripts out there that the community is building. Hopefully we can collab on something, man. I can't wait, man. Just you're killing it. You're amazing with everything you're doing. I'm gonna toss it over to Kat with our last question out the gate with what we do.
All right. We are part of the Nerds of Color. And since you also consider yourself a nerd of color, we always like to close out with, what is it that you can just nerd out about? If you had to give a TED talk on something that you are just passionately into, what is it? You could be as specific as you like.
And it can't be something we already know. You got to give the world something else. Give us something new.
Okay, so it's gonna be a two-part answer, because one of them is partially what Patrick mentioned, might be something that people know. So I'll give that answer first. I'll give the safe answer. But it is actually something that I completely nerd about with my partner all the time. So both me and him, we met at UC Davis as students. He was a b-boy, I was a spoken word poet, and y'all know how the story goes. We both love hip hop. We're both super into like into like constructing lyrics and stuff and like deciphering like, what do you think Lupe Fiasco meant by this bar? What does this metaphor mean? So I think if I had to do like a super nerdy TED talk on rap, it would be deconstructing rap lyrics from like people like Nas, Eminem, and Lupe Fiasco, or also breaking down how I write my rhyme schemes and my metaphors and, you know, what inner bar rhyming looks like. And basically like the very technical standpoint of rap. Like I could go on like me and my partner's name is Rob. Like we've had so many conversations where we just go back and forth and we list like who we think are our top 5 favorite rappers, and we break it down in category from flow to delivery to social impact to bars to battles to beats, like everything. Like we decipher everything that comes with like super.
That's
nerdy.
real nerd shit right there. That's real nerd shit right there. I love that. That's dope.
And the other thing,
see those lists.
Oh, I gotta send it to y'all. The other thing that I can think of off the top of my head that I'm super into, that I also nerd out, again, also with my fiance, is that we're super into anime. We spent much of 2020 watching Korean dramas and eating KBBQ, but we also spent a good amount of that watching a lot of anime. You know, we watched Neon Genesis Evangelion. We rewatched Death Note all over again, and you know I grew up again you know watching Sailor Moon, so I've always been such a big nerd in that aspect. My partner collects Pokemon cards. We have so many Funko Pops at home. He has boxes and boxes of comic books. I have so many books. I collect vinyls as well. So all day, every day, you ask me what I'm nerdy about. There's so many things I'm super nerdy about.
I see you a sneakerhead. I see you the boxes of sneakers back there.
Again, I'm a hoarder.
Hell yeah. And the Illa Manila skateboard that I've been trying to cop, but it's sold out. Yes.
Let me show y'all real quick.
I've been trying to cop that. It's sold out.
Artwork is actually based off of that scene that I have with Rocky Rivera and Hopi in the Us video. So the artwork on this skateboard deck is
beautiful.
It is dope. I've been trying to cop that, but it's been sold out, man. Like I gotta find that on the underground market. Hell yeah, that's dope. I love it. Yo, Ruby, man, again, thank you. To me, you're legendary status, yo. You're boss, man. Like I'm so.
This is how nerdy I am.
Okay. Real. I'm a Kubrick hat, man. See, you're winning on me right now.
Love that.
That is really cool.
I love it. Yo, Ruby, thank you. Again, I hope we can have you back as you continue to just take over the world. Because we're gonna continue to highlight I love you. You are amazing. You are one of my favorite artists right now. And yeah, I can't wait to just see you get everything that you deserve, because you're just, there's heart there. When you see people that are doing it, you know, you can tell the fakes but there's people that have a real message, and that's you. So let me shut up because I'm stumbling over my words. How can people reach out to you for our audio listeners? We're gonna have your information in the description below, but for those that are listening, how can they peep you online and all that?
First of all, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Nerds of Color. I'm super grateful and honored to always be part of the show. I can't wait to be back. It's always such a joy and a pleasure, and so much fun times being in conversation with y'all. For the folks who want to follow me, especially with my sophomore album coming out later this year, and me also working on different projects that I have yet to make an announcement about, y'all can follow me on all my social media platforms. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Ruby Ibarra, RUBYIBARRA, or also rubyabara.com, where I'll be posting my upcoming tour dates.
Hey, come to the East Coast. Come to DC. I can't wait to see you, homie. I need to see you. I'm gonna be right there, front and center. What's good? All right, yo, there you go, Ruby Ibarra. We're gonna talk about her now, and all the greatness that she just put onto us. And there you go, Ruby. Thank you so much. Salamat po, maraming salamat.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Boom, there you go, Ruby Ibarra. Amazing. If you haven't listened to Circa 1991, you need to go check out her mistape, Lost in Translation, and just all the new shit she got going on. She about to blow up the acting world now. You know, she already got that stamp of approval from Diane when we had her on talking about her next written project. I'm a huge fan, y'all. Island Women Rise. She's one of those leaders. Warrior women, just like amazing women like yourselves.
Yes, warrior women. I love that. I thought it was really cool to hear about her come up, and it was really nice to hear that her mom was so influential in getting her into hip hop and introducing her to rap and supporting her interests in going into school. You know,
Definitely.
we joke about it all the time about how, you know, as you said, the arts are for fun and you know, you better go to school to be that doctor, engineer, accountant, nurse. But the fact that she wasn't like forced into going to school for science, that her parents were very supportive of her interests. I just think that's good parenting, and it's good to hear.
Definitely. Yeah. What about you, Kat? What did you pull from this go round with Ruby?
Oh, no, I love the confidence that's so ingrained. She doesn't even think about it as confidence. It's just, it's not even that you have to think well necessarily, like that you have to be hype about yourself so much as you have to just like really know your abilities, right? Like know what you're capable of. And I think that's wonderful. And like, of course, you know, we love to see a working Filipino success story. Fantastic every time.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. How she does it all, man, is just so amazing. And just taking those life experiences, channeling it into the music, channeling it into her day gig. Just she's conquering the world, yo, and saving the world, you know, with that day gig. Like you love to see it. It's the person like Madison, my daughter, y'all. Madison, like check her out. Amazing. You can do it all. And she's a testament to that fact. I love it. Just as amazing as y'all ladies are. Y'all are killing it. So proud of you guys with what y'all are doing. So let them know how they can reach out to y'all. Another great episode with Ruby Ibarra. Make sure you check her out. All her information's below. But I need y'all to also follow the amazing Ates. Tina, how can they find you?
I'm Viva Valentina. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at viva.valentina. I fix stuffed animals and it's super cute. You can also follow me on Twitter and on chess.com at Viva Valentina XO.
Yes. Kat.
Yes, Kataphorric on Twitter and Instagram. I also have a TikTok I don't really use, but you know what? We do update the ShoPowSho TikTok. And if you want a little more behind the scenes, you can subscribe to our Patreon or just buy us a coffee.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Tina. Amazingness. Make sure you follow them. Give them all the love. Amazing Ates. Love you guys. For your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange. I'm gonna start tagging this in because I want y'all to see it because I'm finally getting with my acting out there with the Philippine X Actors Barkada. I will be in Don't Look Up on Netflix when it drops in November. You know, it stars another person, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. But you're looking at it for me.
That person.
Hey. What are Kuya?
So there you go. You can follow me at Strange since 1977 as well as at Temple Far East over on TikTok at the Legend Kuya P. Here where ShoPowSho is headquartered, the Nerds of Color on everything where we give you pop culture from the POC perspective as well as at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday where nerds rule the world. Mahakita, salamat, Kataphorric, Viva Valentina. Love you guys. Ruby Ibarra, you're amazing. Thank you for coming through. Salamat, mahakita. We're out of here.
Makita.
Boom, boom.
What up, y'all? My name is Ruby Ibarra. I'm a rapper, spoken word artist from the Bay Area, California, and I'm so excited to be part of the ShoPowSho. Hope y'all tune in. Hey, what up, y'all? My name is Ruby Ibarra. Happy Filipino American History Month. My Filipino heritage is important to me. because it's everything that makes me who I am. And it's the very reason why I do what I do.
I can't wait for your new album and just, yo, thank you again, Ruby. I know you're busy and you're crazy, but I love you. You're amazing. Salamat po. I can't wait to have you back and throw shine. And hopefully I can collab with you in the future with some other projects that are in the pipeline right now with some things that we're throwing your name at. Your name's being thrown around, just so you know, because you're just so dope. So holla at your boy.
Thank you again so much. You know, when I was on here the first time with Ella and Leslie, it was a fun conversation, and this was just as fun, if not even more fun. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And